Well, welcome. How many of you went to the first session? Or first session? Awesome. Probably you've heard already. By the way, I'm Pastor Brian. For those of you who don't know me, I am the high school pastor here. And I'm excited about this weekend. We call this weekend Priority One. And it's really about fulfilling our God's destiny, for our missional destiny, and reaching people across the world and across the street. And every year we kind of rotate back and forth, between thinking about global missions and local missions. And this year it's about local. And one of the biggest questions we have as we want to reach our friends and our neighbors is around this idea of identity and sexuality and all that. And so I think this topic is so important. And especially when it comes to even dealing in our own homes. It's not like this is an issue that's out there. It's an issue that is in our own homes and probably brings up a lot of fear and a lot of all sorts of emotions. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear from Dr. Gilbert. You're the chair of the psychology department? No, I thought I read that.
I used to be.
You used to be.
No,
all right.
just teaching.
He just teaches.
Yeah.
Corbin, and he's recently come out. When's your book coming out?
Soon, I hope.
Soon.
Publisher.
Yeah. And it's really all about how do we enter into that conversation with our children. How do we enter into that conversation with our children and around this idea of femininity, masculinity, and all that. So I'm really excited for this morning and an opportunity for you to get to hear from Dr. Gilbert. So give it up for him and let's begin.
Thank you. There we go. That works. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this. Where are we going to start? I actually want us to start right off the bat. We need to define this word. How would you define masculinity? John Wayne. What are the words that come to mind?
Being born a male.
Born a male, okay.
Strong.
Male. Strong. Man up.
First that God made.
First God made.
First that God
made. Yep. What are some of the characteristics of masculinity? Protector. Good word.
Provider.
Provider. Warrior. Strong. Servant. Okay. Tough. Ouch. That's not good for me. What are some other ones, though, that we get into when it comes to the definition of masculinity? Athletic. Ouch, that hurts too.
Facial hair.
Leader, facial hair, yes. Can't grow hair, then you're not a man. Ouch, for some. What else? Leader, yes. Look at this definition. Coward. What? No. Ouch. No. We'll get there. We'll get there, actually. Listen to this definition.
Masculine, adjective, having qualities or appearance traditionally associated with men, especially strength and aggressiveness.
And I'll keep playing that in a minute. Strength and aggressiveness. Where did this definition come from? And I remember the first time I saw this, by the way, this is a clothing commercial, which makes no sense, but it's talking about this definition of masculinity, so I look it up and I go, okay, there's these words. Where did that definition come from? Because I found tons of others. And it's actually, this definition has evolved. This isn't what was in the dictionary 20 years ago. It's continually changing. And then my next thought was, why? Why those words? Why did we get to the point of using those words, strength and aggressiveness?
Because we're confused and sinful.
Because we're confused and sinful. Yes. Actually, because there's a story being played out. Listen to where this goes.
Some of the synonyms are macho, manly, muscular, well-built, red-blooded. Red-blooded? My goodness. Strapping, strong, brawny,
powerful. None of these really sound like me.
I think that definition is a little scary.
It's too small for something so big.
It's all about trying to get people to conform and be a certain way.
I think that's what gets us in trouble, is when we say that there's only one way to be a man.
So many individuals, they try and fit, and it just gets to a point where it's too much.
Where they are doing harm to each other and harm to themselves.
You don't have to do that.
You define your own masculinity. You define who you are.
For me, being masculine is being honest.
This is the body that I have. This is what I know. So to me, this is what a man is.
For me, being masculine means being brave enough to be who I am.
Being able to smile, being able to cry, being able to love and be loved.
That's the man I want to be.
What does it mean to me to be masculine? It's more a question of what does it mean to be human?
The last line strikes me. Let's evolve the definition. Let's get rid of masculinity, actually. We're just human. We're all the same. And the interesting thing is, if you just even look at the medical side of this, we can't treat you if we don't know if you're a man or a woman well. Because your body and your DNA matter. Who God made you matters, male or female. But then we actually get stuck on the question of what's masculine and feminine. I think this is where we tend to wrestle. And even as we raise kids, we have this path that we want to take them on, but we really don't know what to do with that. What does it mean to raise my son to be a man? My two sons. What does it mean to raise my daughter to be a woman? Or feminine? Or is that the right questions even? And so I want to kind of take us on a journey to think through this. And I actually want us to start with where all started, the curse. At the fall, the curse for men was to work, to toil the land. It's ringing. To toil the land, to actually not only just toil the land, but actually then have to work to keep it. Like our whole life is about work. I actually think this is a good thing in a sense. The way that He's made us to work. What's sad is most men actually hate their job, which I think plays out in the family and all sorts of societal issues as well. But for women, it was pain in childbirth, and I actually wonder about that. I have a lot of questions about that. Why that? And I wonder if it actually has to do with this bond that moms have with their children, so they don't kill them, actually. That's the release of oxytocin that calms them during breastfeeding or that bonding process. It's beautiful.
I just read a phrase, I don't know who it's attributed to, that you only really love what you really struggle to get.
There's something about struggle. And actually the irony, and we'll get to this later, the irony about parenting is some of the best prayers you can pray for our children is if they go through trauma. No one would really pray that like intuitively, but it's like if we really want them to get what we're going to kind of get to in a minute and say we want them to be, that we want to see them submitting to Christ, it's going to possibly for some be a hard road. Because that's actually what shapes us, is actually pain. We don't see it that way. That's actually what separates Christianity from everything else, is it sees value in suffering versus let me get through it or get around it. There's something about pain. There's something about that process. But there's a second part to the curse for women. And I love the phrasing of this. It's actually the second part of verse 16. And you will desire to control your husband and he will rule over you. And this is disordered desires. And we're actually, this desire to be in control, what we're seeing in our society especially is men who are giving up and women who are taking control in the homes. The way we see this playing out, it's actually not always what we think it is. It isn't, and I see this when I talk to college students, if you're a strong male, then you're a good potential mate, and if you're this nice, meek, submissive woman, you're a good potential mate. And I'm like, well, there goes half of the girls at Corbin. You're not a potential mate because you've got a voice and you've got opinions and you've got personality. And it's like, or maybe we've actually messed up in the way we've taught this. That I want to marry someone that's got a brain and smart and spunky and actually has a vision and a mission and a life and a purpose, not a Stepford wife. Someone who just does. But I think if we're not careful, the picture that's been painted for Christians has been the Stepford wife. So we have to, again, dive into, is there a difference between masculine and feminine, or is it all the same? James 1 actually answers this a little bit in terms of where we're messed up and wrestling. Temptation comes from our own desires, which entice us and drag us away. These desires give birth to sinful actions, and when sin is allowed to grow, it gives birth to death. And then chapter 4 continues here. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. And there's actually this battle for men and women to figure out who I am. We're going to talk more about this weekend in the services, but this is for all of us. And let's look at it through this lens here. The core terror, or fear, for men and for women. And these are words that I actually would not have picked. As I researched this and looked at this same word came up for men over and over, and it made me actually question weightlessness. What does it mean to be weightless?
To have no satisfaction that you are, that you matter to someone else, that you are considered a man, a leader. I don't have what it takes. Yeah.
I don't have what it takes. I don't have what it takes. Who am I to stand up here? Boy, do I ask that question. Every single class I teach. And every single time I get into teaching classes like trauma therapy and teaching people about counseling skills and marital premarital, and I teach a class of psych of addiction. I mean, I've never had a sip of alcohol, but who am I to teach that? Well, it's because I'm not teaching that side. I'm teaching, here's what God's Word says, and here's how we can actually help. And here's what's going on in the heart and soul of that person. How many of us medicate? Actually, most of us probably medicate to some extent. If you think of, for men, this struggle with weightlessness, that I don't have what it takes, this is actually quite normal among men. For women, this is a different word, and it was interesting to think about. The word that came up was invisibility. And I was thinking about my wife. I'm like, when I met her, she was very thankful that she was invisible. She's an introvert, on times a million. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, so this wouldn't really apply. But then I was thinking, as I thought further about it, I realized, oh my gosh, does this apply to her as well? Why being open, inviting, or an invitation with no response? There's something about being a female, being feminine, being a woman, that's actually this opening up with something like, who am I? It's similar to the men, but in a different kind of conversation. Or men and women are exactly the same, and we actually have no differences, and you're raising your children in whatever direction you want. There was this psychologist who actually said, give me any child from birth and I can turn them into whatever I want to turn them into. I can make them a doctor, I can make them a basketball player, I can make them anything I want. And as I studied that more and looked at what that looked like, there was one area that they couldn't do that with, and that was their faith. Actually, your children being in your home are who they are, because of you. But they also have free will. And I remind my kids all the time when they're younger, especially, that you have no free will. I'm your boss, and then they laugh and go on and sin. But as my oldest, who's 12 now, was hitting 10 or 11, I would tell him, you're your own person. We can't control everything you do. And when you go to a friend's house, or we are sitting in the corner at youth group and someone pulls a phone out and goes somewhere they shouldn't, I can't control that. You're your own person. You make your own decisions, even at that young age. And it's part of his parenting and preparing them for really the unknown. As they wrestle with actually these same questions. I don't have what it takes. We'll give you a list of a whole bunch of words to think about when it comes to masculine and feminine. Boy. So let's start with men. And look at these three phrases. Act like a man. Or be strong in your faith. What do these actually mean? Actually, act like a man. If we actually understood the definition of man, we could probably go there. Act like a man. What does it mean to be a man? Well, for many of us, we don't know how to answer that question. I don't know what it means to be a man. I know as I struggled to leave boyhood and become a man, I didn't understand that. I think our society is struggling with the definition of when am I a man? When am I an adult? It used to be when you got your driver's license. You felt that freedom. What they've actually found now is kids are feeling that same kind of adultness when they get a cell phone. Just think about that. At 7 or 4 or... This is creepy. What is it going to be for boys to know I am now a man? We were talking about our son, actually yesterday, that, well, when he hopefully earns his Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts, except he could do that by 15, and it's like, ooh, we don't want to go, all right, you're an adult, see ya. He's still growing, but it's different. What do I do with that? Look at this list here as we continue. Selfless. Sacrificing self. He walks in authority. He also respects authority. Taking on others' sins. There are things I believe that we do as men that we actually take on other people's pain. It's not fair and it's not okay. And I think there's something about even the way God wired and made men to do that. Ironically, my first thought is I go to counseling. I know the irony is the field is full of female counselors. I would dare say men would probably do better in that field, that role. Because of some of their ability to take on stuff that often kill women. And we'll see in a minute that there's a whole spectrum there. And a lot of times, where I used to work in Kansas, every woman I worked with was actually divorced. Because the job, it was social work, the job was so thankless and so tiring and so exhausting, it destroyed their families. It doesn't always do that. It's evidence of other problems. But it's difficult to carry, and I think there's something about that when it comes to masculinity in men that we need to learn to talk about and talk through. Look at these others. Honors God, loves his family, serves his children. And I love this last one. Be home, men. The data actually says that our children are more shaped by us dads and men than they are their moms, which we don't hear that because that would be offensive to the ladies in the room, and especially the single parents. One of the things that I tell moms and dads all the time, or moms, single moms all the time, is try to be the dad. You're not. Be the best mom you can be, and then let others surround your kids, other men. That's why we do Boy Scouts, is to be that example to other boys, so that even for my own kids, when they won't come to me, maybe they'll go to one of these other dads that we've kind of vetted. They're other men that I look up to and that I would trust my kids with, and vice versa. You're building community. There's something about that. But men, you need to be home. The influence of us is incredible. A pastor told my wife one time that children always grow up to worship whatever the dad worships. And think about this. The mom can take the kids to church every Sunday. It's amazing how many kids, as soon as they leave home, still choose to worship what dad worships and walks away. More often than not. There's something about that piece that is kind of, men, it should terrify you, but also should raise the bar as to who we should be. And here's some more. A man controls his emotions and passions, provides for his family, protects, serves and leads his family, follows God's design for true masculinity, which now we're in trouble again. What is true masculinity? What does this mean? And how am I different than Kelly or my wife, or how am I different than a woman? What does that mean? For women, I found an interesting acrostic that I really liked in these key words here, and it was the word brave. So think of these words: bold girl, being countercultural. Women today, it's so easy to just follow what the magazines and everything else tells them to be. There's something about the woman that actually can grow up and actually be living out in a way that's different than the culture and be bold in who she is. Radical. There's purpose apart from herself. Does she have purpose apart from herself? And we'll unpack that more in a minute. She gets into God's word. She's anchored. She's vigilant about the lies that are out there as to who she is or who she should be or how she should look or act or be. This is huge, that Satan is actually out to destroy that piece, that fabric of femininity, if you will. She's empowered, confident, unapologetic. She's God-honoring. She values the Bible. She's submitting. She's a helper. She trusts God. And that word submitting, we actually don't tend to like that word. Why? Because for a lot of us, this has been a word that's been used to abuse, to hurt, to beat down. Versus putting myself under out of a bigger picture is beautiful. We're all doing that. Many of us aren't living out submitting to Christ at all. We're doing our own thing and checking the box that we went to church on Sunday. I would joke to my parents, they were at a big church for a while, and there were 6 services, and I would ask my mom, so, have you got your quota in for the weekend? Church, check. Oh, missed that service, I can go to the next one. If we're not careful, that's how we treat it. Just like I read my Bible today. Did you really read it, or did you fly through it? As in, it wasn't relationship, it was just, in a sense, data. Micah 6:8 says, "Know, people, the Lord has told you what is good, and this is what he requires of you, to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." This right here does not help. Like, I'd actually look at these lists and even go back and forth, go, well, that also applies to him, and that one applies to her, and how do I separate apart, in a sense, the masculine and the feminine, if that's actually supposed to be a good thing? Actually, I think the conversations in our culture are very valid because they're evidence of exactly us not being able to answer this question even in the church. What does it mean to be a man? Well, let me show you a great place to start. This is the pitfalls of men and women. So I'm going to show you this list for men. And if you want a place to start when it comes to your kids, this is actually an amazing place to start. Because this is based on research, based on Zimbardo's research that just came out in the last few months. The crisis for men starts right here. They're saying no to education. They're saying no to going to work. As in, mama's basement's open. We should probably flood it and kick them out. There's excessive maleness, this hyper-masculinity, and it's that aggressiveness, that overbearing, it's that bullying, it's that weak, it's that fear. That's what's really playing out there. The excessive gaming. Video games are not evil, but it's when they are chosen over relationships. And finding that balance. What does that look like? It's when it goes too far. Excessive porn. Our kids are not looking at naked people. In some weird sense, I wish that were the case. They're going click, 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 and they're watching videos that will never, ever be able to be deleted from their head. Graphic, violent, disgusting, perverted. You don't undo that. It physically affects our brain chemistry, and it forever harms the potential of good relationships. It affects us. This one is a critical one. Obesity. Hello, organ. Hi. We're on drugs. Selfish passivity, selfish aggression. Passivity. Go back to the fall and the curse that women will want to take over and men will rule over you. This is a disordered kind of setup, if you will. I think a lot of men are basically saying, forget it. And just kind of throwing their hands up. And I think a lot of it's because we don't understand what does it mean to lead, to love, to be a man. And this is affecting our society. Now, for the women, look at this list. There's 3 things. Comparison is one of them. For identity, disordered desire for approval and validation. This is about competition. We are always comparing, and it's killing us. It's killing our girls. Perfectionism, disordered desire for righteousness and perfection apart from Christ. And then this third one, unbiblical submission, which is what I've talked about a few moments ago. What's interesting is look at this list and look at how one is doing and one is not doing. The list for women is action, and the list for men is actually inaction. Think about that. And I actually think that part of the design, really, if you want to think about this in terms of practical, is men that actually are moving towards something. They're doing something, not just being, just not existing. What we do with our careers and jobs, we get into something and we just kind of get stuck. We get complacent, if you will. Or we pursue in marriage, we get her, and then we just get complacent and we're doing life versus continually pursuing, living out that dance of being a man or a husband, and pursuing your kids as well is a critical piece to this. But it's interesting here that this list on this side for women is one of actually lots of brain power and energy and actually stress. To me, this actually says a lot more about some of the differences in terms of how we play out. Now, they've done brain scans on men and women at rest, and it's interesting. They find that when they scan a woman's brain, and this is very general, so be careful with this, but scan a woman's brain, her brain is 90% active when it's at rest. When they scan a man's brain, they have to check his pulse. Like, it's part of why men can go fishing or remote, which I don't understand. What's funny is my wife has that kind of brain. I ask her what she's thinking. Nothing. I'm like, teach me your ways. Because I've got the spaghetti, she's got the waffle, if you've read that book. I'm the one that's all connected and all going like crazy, and I'm a mess. Actually, what I say all the time is I'm the girl. She's the guy. Or man, do we have some messed up constructs about masculinity and femininity. And I would honestly say I spent years worrying and stressing over who I was because nothing fit what I was seeing until I met Kelly, who has been the most amazing, because she's so the girl and I'm so the guy, and it's beautiful to see that dance now in relationship. But before her, all I saw was I'm broken, I'm messed up, I don't fit, I like the wrong things, I'm drawn to the wrong things. There's something wrong. And what's sad is I think that's normal for too many of our kids. As they compare, as they question. It's actually normal for boys and girls to question their sexual identity. Most look down and it's a done question, and that's it. There's no other question. But about 25% of boys and girls do go further into that. They really question and wrestle. The sad thing is, in our culture today, about 75-95%, I've seen that big range in terms of results, because it's still a big question mark. If you leave that alone, it works itself out for them to be the biological self they are. But when we intervene with medication and when we intervene with surgeries, it forever alters who they are. Like, first thing is it sterilizes them, and then it completely alters their future. And we don't know the results. I saw a study yesterday saying that more and more people who've had those surgeries are regretting it. And what do we do with that? Our kids are hurting, they're aching. I think it's because we can't allow for, in a sense, male and masculine to be a spectrum when it comes to how it plays out. We actually get into, well, if it's a boy, he must like sports. Like, well, that takes me out. Or he's strong. I'm like, well, most of you ladies in here could take me in a heartbeat, because boy, am I not. I live with a chronic illness that's trying to take me out all the time. I don't know strength. I blacked out by one little punch from my kids multiple times because of Crohn's disease, and they know where my weak spot is. And my son goes to youth group, and the first thing he tells them in his prayer request is, I wish I could wrestle with Dad, because we've never been able to do stuff like that. How do we play out masculinity and femininity is actually important. My daughter the other day was standing at the sink on a stool stirring something and goes, I'm doing woman's work. I'm like, who says? And I just started arguing like crazy with her. I'm like, whatever. It's not woman's work. Let's go clean the toilet. Just kidding. We're messed up. And where does it start? It starts in our homes. And I would say very unintentionally. Why? Because back to that, what I said about we can make you into whatever we want you to be from birth. Your sons and daughters become, even in their passions, a lot of what you encourage or discourage. Which worries me about that with families a lot of times is their kids go, oh, I'm interested in this. And we go, all right. And we run with it. Oh, now I'm interested in this. And we run with it. Versus looking at that and looking at the vision we have for them as well and trying to make a wise decision with them. This is hard to do. When your kid says, I want to do this, and you're going, no, I don't think that's best right now. I'm seeing less and less of that in our culture. Or what I'm seeing like with the Corbin students, the amount of athletes that actually say, I hate my sport. And I just did it because. There's a long story there. The neat ones are the ones that go, it got me into school, and I'm looking forward to being over soon and moving on with my life. And others, it's, man, that shaped me, and I can't wait to go coach others and lead others because that's an amazing tool for ministry. Ooh, beautiful heart. What's the goal in raising sons and daughters? I'd actually say part of our options in terms of the next step for us, and think about this for men and women first. This specifically says men, but we actually have 4 options. Here's 3 of them. The shallow man, the secularized man, and the spiritually addicted man. How many of us grow up and we go to church, but we're just this deep? Or we're in church and maybe in some kind of fellowship, but our life's about conquering the business world. We're out there killing it. And we're all about different things that are out there. Or the spiritually addicted. We know there are many in our church. And man, they're at everything. They're all about God stuff. But they don't have a relationship with God. With Jesus. What about this one? What about the sincerely struggling man? I feel like that's what we actually need. This is a man who actually says Romans 7:15 throughout their whole life. I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. This is the man that struggles. The world looks at us Christian and goes, you guys are psycho because you say one thing and do another. That's exactly right. Versus, what if we actually say, I'm bent, I'm broken. Actually, the sincerely struggling man will not live sinlessly, but will on occasions fail badly. He'll often fail badly in how he relates. He'll fail as a husband. He'll fail in his relationship with his kids. This is actually reality. He will struggle mightily against sin, always longing to know the power to live a holy life. What does this look like? Will hate everything sinful even when he is powerfully drawn to its pleasures. This is a man who actually sees some of his faults and bents and where he's drawn, but he actually, and this is a really critical word, he submits it to Christ. He puts that under the authority of Christ. And I would say every one of us here right now have those things. These areas in our life that if we're not careful, that becomes the idol. And we've got to submit that under the authority of Christ, as in, this is so critical that we have to die to it. For some of us, it's attractions. Same sex, opposite sex, doesn't matter. I'm married. It doesn't matter what else or who else I'm attracted to. It's dying to anything and everything. or if I'm drawn to using this to medicate, drugs, alcohol, porn, gaming, anything. If I'm drawn to that and this has become unhealthy, it's dying to that. That's beautiful. We actually, if we're not careful, we fall into this place of selfish goals. And there's two pictures of it. One, to live according to values I naturally embrace so that my life goes well according to preferences that honor me. This is my bent. For many of us, our theology and then what we teach our children is actually centered around my story, my own brokenness, not where I actually want to take my children. The book that I have coming out is on, still can't figure out a title, but it's at the publisher now, and it's focused on a biblical sexual ethic for parents. Why? Because I believe the leadership of our children on healthy sexuality starts with the parents knowing what they believe. I've taught for, 14 years now, human sexuality at a school in Georgia and then at Corbin. And the goal of that is exactly that same thing. You need to know what you believe so you can lead well. And what I'm finding is we don't have a clue. And the funny thing is, even at Corbin, my kids come all the time. They're hearing it for the first time, maybe, sitting in class at 17, 18, 19. My kids, my favorite one last year was when I was teaching the theology of masturbation. And my son was there and was like, oh, okay, let's go. And at the end of the first class, he's like, Dad, can I come back to the next class? Because it was the second part. I'm like, sure. So he came along and we talked through that. That was fun. We talked about it before, but in his brain, he's kind of like not connecting. Well, there it was connecting. We need those conversations. And as for me, and what I do and teach, that's the area of sexuality and healthy sexuality that so matters, because that is the area that I think is killing our culture as we buy into kind of whatever goes, whatever feels right in the moment. There are no consequences. This other one here, to depend on whatever means are at my disposal and under my control, still all about me, that promise to relieve both discomfort brought on by difficult circumstances and emotional suffering that is occasioned by unmet desires. It's all about me. I'm trying to find something to fill me. There's nothing this side of heaven that will fill us. There's no sexual encounter. There's no food. My favorite example is you go to the restaurant, you get say you spend $300 on an amazing meal. I don't know why you do that, but you spend a whole lot of money, and then what do a few hours later when you get home to the fridge, standing in front of the fridge? You make a bowl of cereal, or you eat a Pop-Tart. You defraud that meal you just had with some piece of junk, late night snack. Same for sex. Sex never fills. Nothing ever this side of heaven. There's no job that makes you it. You've arrived. It usually is now more and more and more, or newer or better, or this becomes a rat race unless we get that off the table and it's a different goal, a different kind of target as men, as women, adults, but then raising our children as well. It's like raising them well. This is raising them well. Sit on her bike, but also in her pink little Harley outfit, shooting Nerf guns. This was my 40th birthday party. I mean, for half of you don't care about motorcycles. Well, my kids do, because they were born into this family. And it's funny to see, even when they were like 1 or 2, they could hear the sound on my bike. Daddy, most kids can't do that, but mine can. Because every kid's shaped by you. You shape your kids. And I jokingly say, you're not going to get you a car, I'm going to get you a motorcycle. They're cheaper, and insurance is cheaper. Yeah, we can go through all the dangers of that, blah, blah, blah. Go out with a bang, I guess it is. What do we do with this? Practical application. How do I know what to then do? I love these words right here, responsibility and resiliency. One of the first things that I see when it comes to the kids that are growing up is they're not given responsibilities. And then we ones that all of a sudden have responsibility. No wonder they're not taking on responsibility. That other word, resiliency, though, is a problem. The only way you gain resiliency is struggle. But you don't just gain it through struggle. You've got to help them learn even through that struggle. They actually get bullied. And it's not about eliminating the bully. It's about helping them realize that there are going to be people against you your whole life. How can you honor and love and respect them anyway? That's actually sometimes taking on that load that you don't want to take on when you actually walk away. When every fiber of your being says fight. Or everyone around you says fight. Oh, this is so hard. Tackling taboo topics. Dads, make fatherhood a priority. Getting a job, kids, as soon as you're of age. And one of our, I think my kids are, I call them experiments because they're in process. But my oldest, I tell him that I want to hopefully see you an eagle by 15 and by 16 you're employed. Now that's my goal, but he's got to just choose it. He's got to decide what he does, and I've got to be really careful how I lead that. Because here's what I actually tell parents a lot. Your parenting is actually over by the time they're about 11 or 12. As in parenting in the framework you have of parenting ends at about 10 or 11, 12. And most parents get really mad at me when I say that. And I'm like, no, if we don't adjust to the new world that they're in, we become the problem. And they're doing everything to buck you, the system. Versus you now walking alongside them. Not friends yet, but alongside them. Parenting when they were younger was very different because they needed your guidance. But by 10 or 11, they actually are fully formed, if you will. And then teenage years, we see the monsters we created. Or, like Paul David Tripp talks about, it's the age of opportunity. That adolescence doesn't have to be this nightmare that we see oftentimes. It's a time of seeing them grow and blossom and the result of the kind of man or woman you instilled in them. The kind of example you are, I would dare say, not in your strength, but in your struggle. And your honesty about your difficulties and your even failures. Time management, we have to teach them by helping them manage their own time. It's funny how many college students can't get up for classes. And their roommates have to be their mommy and daddy. I was like, because you should have had a non-mommy and daddy back when you were about 10 in terms of that. But they were taken care of all the way through off to college. Whoa, careful with that. The biblical picture of marriage is another critical piece. Are we painting that picture? Not just in our actions, because they're watching that as a husband and wife. And if you're not married, they're watching everything too. The way you treat people, the way you talk about others, your own stewardship of that as well. But then are you investing in them painting their own picture? What it means to be a husband, masculine, male, or a wife, feminine, female. But that those constructs aren't, I'm masculine, and we go to these certain words that are some good for some, but not for others. Strength, actually, it's not just strength of brawn. Can you stand up for things that are true? Can you actually put a limit on spending, boundaries with money? Can you actually leadership? This is critical. So where I kind of want to land, this is the passage of scripture that actually puts men and women side by side, which is very interesting to think about. Titus 2. Titus 2, and by the way, these slides are on my website, HealingLives.com. It's just top of that, you can click, it's a PDF. So if you want to download these are there. But Titus 2, verses 2, 6, 7, and 8 talk about men, and then we'll go to the next one in a second. It says, teach the older men to be temperate, worthy of respect, self-controlled, and sound in faith, in love and endurance. Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. And then for women, 3, 4, and 5. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can urge younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, that no one will malign the word of God. For men, this is the list. There are two areas that actually overlap in that passage for men and women. Self-control is mentioned for both, and teaching. There's something about the way we lead as men and women, but I would say it's also very different. So again, think of this list. We tend to go with men, all sorts of other words I would say that are contrary or just different than even these. Temperate, worthy of respect, self-controlled, sound in faith, perseverance, endurance. They're an example. Or these words we had up earlier, selfless. They sacrifice themselves. They walk in authority but also respect authority. They're responsible. For women, reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers. That's an interesting one. And I look at the potential downfalls that we actually can have as women, and that's in our mouths, our speech, gossip. Does that mean men don't? Gosh, no. They do as well. But there's something about why that's there. The next one I'm not quite sure about. Not addicted to much wine. I guess it's okay for men, but not women. Well, I guess it's one of those question marks for me, but I think it's about that self-control piece. There's something about not being in control. The irony is, what is our culture doing? We're doing everything we can to grab onto control, but also just not be responsible. Don't ask me for anything. Don't expect anything. And then here's that brave acrostic there. Now, if you think of those two lists, and you think of your children, I don't know about you, but I'm actually kind of still a little frustrated. Because I go, but what does it mean to be a man? And what does it mean to be a woman? Actually, it makes me go, we're actually asking, I think, some very accurate questions in our culture. That what we've actually done is we've gone to that previous definition of aggressive. That's manly. Or it's the Bear Grylls kind of go out in the middle of nowhere with nothing and survive stuff. Or is it? That a lot of our definitions, the way we play this out, and if you think of parents, we come and we actually lead our children, but do we lead them intentionally? Or just do we lead them by our own story? I so don't really care for the outdoors that much. Camping, I could care less about Boy Scouts. But yet I have found, because of some choices we made as a family, and I would even dare say not intentional, we joined a Cub Scout group when we moved here that led to friends, that led to community, that led to where we're at today. And now it's very intentional. And it's about building a group of people that love on our kids and grow them up. It just happens to be through this method that is so secondary. Same for sports, though. I don't see that with sports. Actually, what I see is it's worshipped. But that should be the same story. That I get into this, but it's for a much bigger purpose. Some of the good Christian films we've actually had on some of these stories of a key coach that mentored and brought along a team, group of kids. Those are beautiful. That's our job. Is being that example, being that leader, taking them on a journey very intentionally. A lot of it is shaped around us. Why did we end up in Boy Scouts? Well, because my dad's an Eagle Scout. He did that, and he didn't do it with me because we were overseas. Because he didn't love me, I guess. Just kidding. And it was very much one of those, I'm not sure why we chose it. That's a lot of us. We chose something really with not a lot of thought put into it. But then we're all of a sudden all in. And is this really a good thing? Or is this an idol? Or is this actually worship? We need to think through this as a parent, leading our kids. Because I would dare say this also leads to us making other decisions that say, you know what? That's become too big of a problem or an influence on our family. And that needs to go. Or this priority trumps that one, and we're going to make this decision as a family. Why? Because you're trying to think down the road and who you're trying to raise. instead of an article I saw recently that talked about lawnmower parents. So we've had the helicopter parents, now we have the lawnmower ones, which is they're just paving the way in front of their kids so that nothing bad ever happens to them. And if they get a bad grade, it's the teacher's fault. And if they get anything wrong, it's always someone else's fault. And I'm going to protect my kids at all costs. Yeah, good luck with that. Because it ends up with kids that can't live as adults. They can't keep a job, get a job, keep a job. They can't provide. They can't be the kind of men or women that actually honor God. Your sons need your mentoring into adulthood and a very careful framework of masculinity. For me, masculinity was foreign. I was music major. I loved music. I loved anything I loved to crochet and cross stitch. And if we're at Aunt Grandma's house, I'm in the kitchen with all the other aunts because the guys are out there doing dumb boy stuff. That was me. But what I gathered from that was, I'm so broken, I'm so messed up, there's something wrong with me. I don't know who I am. No wonder I became a counselor. What should have been there was, no, you've got different interests. Let's help you channel those. Let's help you make wise decisions within those. But you're not going to like that. And that's okay. How can I help channel that in a way? Okay, take it a step further. For me, it wasn't the attraction, but what if it is attractions? And I think where we kind of want to land and really sink in this morning, is there are things that we've got to be able to put under the authority of Christ. And I would say for some, it is our job has become our idol, and we need to be careful with that or quit. Or our hobby has become too much, and that needs to die. For others of us, it's my attractions take me to places that I wrestle with, but I actually choose not to go. And I must put that under the authority of Christ. I must die to that. And I would again dare say every one of us has those areas that we have to think through and wrestle with. Your kids do too. And how to help them navigate that your son, who might not be the sports star, is still your son and needs to be raised up in masculinity. Your daughter, who may not be all girly, is still your daughter, and she needs to understand what true femininity is. And it's not in loving dresses and dressing up and all this, what we kind of call girly. It's not that. We're actually missing their hearts in that process. The goal that we have, that I have, that I want you to have, is touching, getting into their hearts. Barna, in his research, found that the goal in raising children is raising champions for Christ. If that's the goal, it's very simple, the trajectory. Versus they got to get married, they got to get out of the house, they got to go to college, they have to go to college. No, not that's not required. They have to fill in the blank. No. Whatever they do, whatever they set themselves to, are they doing it under utter submission to God? That I'm following you, Lord. That means when your son or daughter says, hey, I've been called to be a missionary, we cry, and we celebrate they're leaving us, which is so difficult. When they go do something, what's the heart behind why they're doing that? Why they're giving themselves to that? Same in marriage, as they go into that. So to me, that's frustrating, actually. What I would want from a seminar like this would be some clear-cut answers. This is boy, this is girl. I guess what I'm more here to say is it's not that clear-cut. But growing up masculine and feminine, on that spectrum, if you will, you are born male for a reason. You're born female for a reason. And I think part of it is finding out what that reason is. And how do you love well? How do you lead well in the gifting and areas that God gave you? And, really difficult, there are some things men you can't do, and there are some things women you can't do, and to be okay with that. I also think we fight some really difficult battles. How can I be the best me that I can be? Our kids are asking those exact same questions, and they're watching how we navigate those questions. So we have like 5 minutes. Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned you puzzled why it says too much wine for women but not for men. The thought just occurred to me, is it because the women were at home, the wine was in the pantry, they kind of in charge of that stuff, and so was it more of a temptation for them?
That's an interesting analysis. It's a good one. I don't know.
And another one, if I may ask, you said excessive porn for men. Why porn at all?
Well, there shouldn't be any porn at all. But what we're actually seeing is when you go in, it's like this rabbit hole, and it sucks you in. It's always new, different, and it's the excessive that so rewires the brain that they are basically incompetent. So that's the extreme of it. Yes, there should be none at all. Yeah. And that's the research from Zimbardo that he's found. He's the one that did the prison studies from way back when. I don't know if you know that name, from General Psych.
So for how much do you think stuff like Ritalin has kind of shaped kids with attention deficit disorder and all the misdiagnosed is from a masculine frame? Because a lot of those say all your activity, I know this is females too, but needs to be filtered into like a digital world as opposed to
Ooh, that's a can of worms. Ritalin. What's the effect of Ritalin on our boys and masculinity? My bent is towards I'm anti-medication in some sense. Yeah, medication saves some people's lives. And so what a doctor in Atlanta, a psychiatrist, Christian psychiatrist in Atlanta said, he goes, I feel like we're medicating the wrong kids. Like a lot of times the diagnosis of ADD is just male. Why? Because we've made school very female oriented. As in, we homeschool, but try to get my middle son to sit still for 5 minutes, good luck with that. Anyone who's had him in anything in church. His name is Blaze, so we named him well. Oh, God help us. And he's like, anytime this subject's come up, he's like, penis. I mean, everything is just funny jokes. He's just psychotic. Anyway, love him. ADD medication, I think, is actually one of the causes of some of our problems. But again, I think for some, it is a lifesaver. Part of the barometer of that is when you're put on a medication, and this is for those around watching, if they're a different person and it's a positive, if it helps and that outweighs the side effects, it's a win. But what I see more often than not, the side effects are worse. And it's not enough of a win to be worth that. And the fact is it's only where it starts. It actually leads to other drugs. Right now, bipolar is on like a 900% diagnosis for children, and all the medications, none of them have been tested on kids. And so we're seeing serious, forever effects of medications on kids that were never meant to be put on. So yes, I think this is huge. And a lot of it is our structure for even school or other things. So, yeah.
So near the beginning, you talked about fear for men, fear for women. I really resonated with that. So as a parent, how do you help that in your kids? Like, what was it, the weightlessness for boys? How do you instill that, they can do what it takes, and for girls, whatever it was?
I think that for girls it was visibility. I think for the key step I would say is it's actually using some of those words. A lot of it's just saying it in that way. That this is going to be one of your struggles, or this is going to be, and giving them a vocabulary to use to see, wow, actually I really wrestle with feeling like I'm an imposter. It's like, well, so do I. When you start relating even to your own story to that, or to some of your own current, I feel the same way, then you actually have this connection in that conversation and leadership, where it's not I'm leading and I've got no problems, come follow me. It's this, we're on this journey together, and I'm learning to love your mom, or I'm learning to love your dad in ways that I never thought I'd have to wrestle with this. Or I'm learning to deal with that. We watched a friend of mine, his wife dealt with pill addiction, painkillers. And it's sad, but these are the times where you find out what true love really is. In my counseling, watching couples go through infidelity, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I love working with couples who've had affairs, because the redemption is beautiful. I look at those marriages post-infidelity and go, I want that kind of marriage. I just don't want to go through that. I want that kind of marriage. Well, then what I found over the years, 15 years of marriage, is my wife and I have been through hell because of my health and what I've put her through. And it's neat to look at today and go, I feel like we're heading in that direction. Why? Pain is what leads to that. It's the struggles. It's not the, we've had such a great life. It's like, well, then you haven't really lived. Yes, sir.
So where do you fall on, say, just teenagers and use of social media? Where
do I fall on it?
I mean, like, guidelines of how much is too much? I mean, is it just different for each kid? And
so,
lead by example?
it is, definitely we are leading by example whether we want to or not, but it's a case-by-case basis for each kid, but it's teaching them to steward it. What I see is a lot of parents are, here's this device and we've locked it down until it can barely do anything but a calculator. Well, then it's just a calculator, you dumb parent. Yeah. No, here's the world though. And actually that's what these are called porn portals, FYI, that's what I call them. If you give them,
what was that word?
Porn portal.
Porn portal?
Yep. If I click here and I go to Safari and I type in porn right there, P-O-R-N, go. No, it went to protect young minds. Anyway, it goes to a list of Pornhub and other websites, text. But right next to it is two little words, images and videos. That's how close your kids are to the world. 3 or 4 clicks, they're there. And unless you're with them 24/7, sleeping with them, bathing with them, everywhere they go and holding their hands, they are on their own. So it's a stewardship thing. And to me, all social media and stuff is a stewardship thing. What we found, even with our 12-year-old, is to deny everything is also damaging. Like he walked into the youth group here and he was like, they're talking about stuff that I don't understand and I feel stupid. We homeschool. We're one of those. And so we gave him a phone. Like, all right. And what's funny is he bought all these things and he saw how dumb they were, and the next thing we know, he's like, don't want them anymore. I'm like, okay. Can I get my money back? Shoot, no, that's not how it works. And he can now have those conversations, but it's also stewardship. And then right now he's lost his phone for some reason. So you also then get some back and forth. That's what Xboxes are, control, if you will, there.
When I was young, porn was hard to get, and it was encrypted. Now it's so accessible. How do we train our boys to resist that?
The critical piece of that is to talk about it. We probably bring up the topic of porn every day in our house. Every single day. It is not something you dance around. It's not something you hint at. We go there. That's actually the reason why I wrote the book I wrote, was that I had a membership site focused on parents to teach them how to do this, and then age-appropriate conversations. What do I tell my 0 to 5-year-old? What do I tell my 6 to 10-year-old? What do I tell my 11 to 17-year-old? We talk about technology. We talk about, and I'm in the process right now of making videos on all these topics. Because to me, this is what's going to kill our kids. It's technology, it's screen time, and the data is overwhelming the impact of social media, the impact of just screens, the impact of pornography, all these things, and the rewiring of our brains. Our kids are not going to get married or stay married. They're not going to know how to be faithful. They're not going to keep jobs. Or we're going to set them up to be different. And that's actually something I've struggled with. I'm like, we're supposed to be different as Christians. I don't think we're different. I think this is an area where we're going to be drastically different. We're going to be bold. We need men and women who are bold because they are different, because they deal with this subject very easily. Like when it comes up, they're a no-brainer of how I'm going to address this, because it's no. It's settled in my heart ahead of time. Thank you guys so much. If you have more questions, let me know. And those cards, if you can just lay over here, if you fill them out. Thanks for having me.